I'm too nostalgic, I'll admit it.
We graduated 4 months ago. What can you possibly be nostalgic for?
I'm nostalgic for conversations I had yesterday. I've begun reminiscing events before they even occur. I'm reminiscing this right now. I can't go to the bar because I've already looked back in it in my memory, and I didn't have a good time.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. It's time for another comic book retrospective. We're going to DC Comics. We're going to talk about Batman, specifically Detective Comics 471 through 476, part of the Strange Apparitions kind of collected edition, probably the best stuff that's kind of in the heart of it. It was published from May 1977 into April 1978. Detective Comics wasn't a monthly series at that time. I believe Breen said it was releasing like 8 times a year. So it would have taken you almost a year to get through this story arc. It's quite good. We've got Steve Englehart, Marshall Rogers, Terry Austin on this story. They're on every single issue. And this thing is dynamite. There's so much stuff going on here. Breen, obviously, this would have been like when you just started reading. Like, you would have been a couple years into your hobby.
Yeah, when this came out, you remember the first time I did the aficionados with you, it was a Batman-related stream, and you asked us all what our favorite Batman stories of all time was, and this was mine. Because it was just, it started a few issues before with Walt Simonson doing the art, but these 6 issues that we're going to talk about were absolutely redefined the character, and a lot of what was put in place in just those 6 issues are still being felt today.
Oh, yeah. We just saw Jokerfish in Batman 3 Jokers from Jeff Johns. How many years later is it? Almost 50 years later. Still talking about this story.
And it was a popular episode in the animated series in the 90s.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Obviously, that's like the big issue in here is the revelation of the Jokerfish. It ends up being kind of the end of the story. And this is good stuff here, Joe. It feels like, you know, Batman he's like, he's got these like super high ears on his thing. He's got the white eyes. I always like Batman with the white eyes on his mask. Got a kind of a not quite classic like Golden Age feel, but certainly a classic version of Batman in comics. And you know, he's doing detective work. Yeah, it's always nice.
It is nice. Marshall Rogers is one of my favorite Batman artists of all time. You can see a lot of the influence in people like, you know, Todd McFarlane and Tim Sale with the big flowy cape. He has a lot of fun with that, and the like you were saying, the high pointed ears. But another interesting thing here too is Marshall Rogers colors all of his own work. He has Terry Austin ink it, and then he goes in and does the colors. So that I think that's an interesting approach. You don't see that combination very often of penciler colorist.
I'm glad you mentioned there's a part where Batman's mad and he doesn't have the white eyes. He's got red eyes. I was like, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Good little touch.
No, it's great. Interesting thing about this, this first part, 471, May 1977, pretty big movie came out that month.
Well, Star Wars action, huh?
Yeah, it's Star Wars came out, as well as in comics, the first issue of the Star Wars comic came out with Howard Chaykin, and it came out before the movie.
I think it's 4 months before the movie is when the comic book debuts.
Yeah, it was, the Star Wars, the comics were already out.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at, in a way, not officially, but in a way, Star Wars is kind of like the first Marvel movie. The Marvel comics are coming out, and then people went and saw the movie. Also,
it's worth a debate if that's a comic book franchise first.
It's certainly interesting. You also had right here Steve Ditko launching Shade the Changing Man at DC right around here. And a fun little key issue came out. It was either May or June of 1977. Iron Fist number 14. One of the only key issues of Iron Fist. Try to find someone selling a run of Iron Fist that didn't pull Iron Fist 14 from it. It's the first appearance of Sabretooth.
Nice.
So
he's not exactly the Sabretooth that we know today. He's kind of just a dude in a costume.
Yeah, but it's That doesn't change its value. But that, and then Uncanny X-Men 106 came out in June, and that's one, going back to a previous discussion we had. That's the one issue that Bob Brown illustrated, who did a lot of, was on the Avengers. Mm-hmm. So it was. That was an inventory story that they bookended with Claremont. And I think Dave Cockrum did like a couple of pages just like bookended because it was like a Danger Room story. But that was, I believe Bill Mantlo wrote it and Bob Brown illustrated it, and it came out after Bob Brown had passed away. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on around here.
Absolutely. So we're going to have to get into this because there are so many things going on in these 6 issues. And this is the second time we're going to have done a comic book retrospective on Steve Englehart. Obviously, we've done the Avengers Defenders War. So he is a man of many talents. He had success at both publishers. And this is the beginning. We mentioned that it's kind of it's within the Strange Apparitions story arc. So there's a few things that happen before there, and it leads right into this where basically Batman's been injured by Dr. Phosphorus. He's got like these radiation burns on him. And there's a meeting that's called by like the Gotham City Council led by Boss Thorne. And they need to take out Batman. He's become too dangerous. He's a liability to what they're doing as far as their organized crime, or whatever. Little do they know, Batman is hiding in the chimney. He's having a listen brain. Unfortunately, he's still injured. He slips a little bit, and he has to head out of there as they kind of figure out that they've been monitored a little bit.
Yeah, and you notice, but before that, during the meeting, one of his henchmen says, do we really want to do this? Because Batman keeps the worst elements away, and he keeps the tourists coming in, and that's where we're getting our money. And Boss Thorne says, nah, it's still not worth it. He's got to go. And then, you hear the little drop in the chimney, and they go look, and he's gone by them because he couldn't hang on because I said the wounds from Dr. Phosphorus haven't healed. So I thought that was interesting. Right off the bat, you get this Batman isn't quite as he's not at full strength, so that's going to play into the story a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that leads right in the next scene where Bruce, he gets word that there's a super secret like hospital for rich people, and you can go there and no one's going to know about your treatment, and he can get these radiation burns kind of taken care of. And before he leaves, he lets Silver St. Cloud know, Joe Corallo, which I will say this is one of the worst comic book names I've ever seen. it's so hard to say. It doesn't roll off the tongue. It's Silver St. Cloud. What a name. Yeah. And, but this is good news because it's that little beam of hope that Alfred has that maybe Bruce has like a brighter future, where he's going to settle down, and maybe this is going to be the one. He's checking in with her. Obviously, he cares about this woman.
Oh yeah, no, she's she's great. Breen and I have both talked about a certain level of fondness for Silver St. Cloud, but she's one of the few like competent women he's been attracted to, which is nice. Competent civilians at least. I'm not, not to earn the ire of Catwoman and Talia fans out there, but yeah, she's great. And this whole thing, the whole setup, everything with Boss Thorne. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are listening to this who are familiar with Rupert Thorne from the animated series in the 90s and maybe some other appearances, but never actually read him in a comic because he's not really that involved in post-crisis Batman. So I think there's a lot of people who might have wanted to read stuff with Boss Thorne in it and just never knew where to go. And this is the start of a lot of that. So definitely got to say
that. He's like the connective tissue of this entire story. It's not just like one story with one villain. He's the guy that's there the entire time, but we get a lot of really cool villains, a lot of big reveals, returns in this. And he's kind of like the through point as far as the narrative.
Oh yeah, no, he's He's so good. And then if you like this, the Jerry Conway run, he's very important in. And there's a whole like bigger arc where he's even more involved. So you read this, then you read that. But yeah, so Bruce goes to this place he got the recommendation to from, I believe, a friend of his that I think a lot of us know, Jerry Robinson, who, a little Easter egg there, creator of, the Joker and many other aspects of Batman.
There's also a place in here called the Fox Garden. Obviously a reference to Gardner Fox. There's things in there.
There's a lot of little things. And there's also there's some references, like in some of the issues, you'll look in the background and Marshall Rogers will put in the names of everyone who worked on the book. It'll be like, it'll put Austin in the background, Englehart, Marshall. Like it's cute. But yeah, he goes here and to his surprise, is treated pretty roughly very quickly.
It turns out Dr. Todd Hunter and Nurse Magda aren't exactly the nice people that he thinks they are. He thinks it's strange. He's like, why are they telling me to take a nap? I just woke up. I think he dozes off almost immediately. And when he wakes up, he realizes he's in some serious crap. And like you mentioned earlier, Silver St. Cloud is not a damsel in distress. She's going to check on Bruce because it seems like something's out of sorts. She gets kind of turned away. But Breen, Bruce is essentially, is he in prison?
It certainly would appear to be that. And
he's like, is that a dungeon? What do you call it?
He's at the Gray Tower Clinic, and they put him in a room. He's under lock and key. But he still has his stuff, and where your first instinct would be, okay, what kind of idiot doesn't check his stuff before they throw him in that room? We find out later why. Secret. But he gets out, puts on his costume, escapes immediately, and runs into a couple of characters we have not seen literally since Batman #1.
Yeah, there's a couple of monsters on the roof, right?
The monsters, and that's the first clue if anybody had still been reading from the beginning, which it isn't far-fetched because the difference between Batman 1 and this story is less time than I've been reading. So there could have been some eagle-eye viewers might have said, ooh, I know who Dr. Todd Hunter is now.
Yeah.
And we find out a couple pages later when Batman confronts Dr. Todd Hunter, and he's going, why are you doing this? I know you know who I am. And he rips off his mask, and he's Hugo Strange, who hadn't been seen since, I think, Batman or Detective Comics 49 or something like that. I mean, he'd been gone forever. And they start talking to each other, and then
they get the villain monologue. I love a villain monologue.
When the nurse goes, what is this, a mutual admiration society? And he goes, in a way, my dear, it is. The Batman and I have come to respect each other, blah, 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 blah. And they, as they're talking, he gets bitten by the snake. And this is what the next page, when Batman's looking up and the scene is through his eyes, but he's not seeing through slits. And he knows something's wrong.
His mask is gone.
Yeah, and Strange now knows who he is, and that's how the first issue ends.
That's a big reveal. That's a huge reveal there, Corallo. I love this one.
Yeah, no, it's so good. It's just you don't really see that often in these comics. Like, but I feel like a lot of comics in the 70s were really starting to push these boundaries. You had a lot of people who were coming up who were fans, who were starting to be, fans of, the late Golden Age into the Silver Age, who were finally getting to tell the stories they wanted to tell and were able to push it. And that's definitely what's going on here. But yeah, I know we'll go into it a little bit more as we go along. But Wes, since you brought up, Steve Englehart and how we already did Avengers Defenders War, as you were reading this, what were you thinking in terms? Because these are two drastically different stories from the same writer in a not horribly long distance apart, just a few years between these stories. What were you thinking? Like, if you told me this was written by another person, I'd totally believe you.
There's a lot less camp here.
Yeah.
There's a lot more like macabre kind of feel to it. Like, it feels very dangerous. And certainly there was the action and everything in Avengers Defenders War, but you didn't think anyone was probably going to die in that one. This one, he's like, someone's going to die here. This is crazy.
And we should point out at this point that Englehart was brought to DC to write the Justice League for a year. And one of his conditions was, I get to write Batman also. And that's how we got him on this.
Well, thank you, Steve Englehart, for negotiating that one. And when we get into the next issue, what's great about this is it doesn't start right where it left off. A lot of times they would just, oh my goodness, Batman's identity. No, there's a little bit of time that's passed, and Hugo Strange has plans, and he's devious. He's essentially taken over his life. He is Bruce Wayne. He's like taken over the Wayne board. He's wearing a suit and just kind of amusing himself, being a jerk off. We find out Alfred and Bruce are kind of in the same cell. But Bruce is kind of sedated at the same time. And we get his big evil plan, Eric. He's going to bankrupt Wayne Foundation. He's going to steal Bruce's fortune. But thankfully, well, maybe not thankfully. We'll talk about Silver St. Clair here, but that's a pretty devious plan. It's standard, villain fodder back in the day.
It was, but there's more layers to it because he brings Alfred in to look after Bruce because it's clear he doesn't want him dead. Now, that might be because he might need him to mine for information to keep the ruse going because he obviously can't know much about Bruce Wayne's life, as is evidenced when Silver St. Cloud shows up at his office and he has no idea who she
the hell is this?
He knows she's someone that came to the clinic, but he doesn't even know her name. And that like I see the key I gave you still works. And she goes, yeah, just like last time. And he still doesn't know her name. So, maybe we should just call things off. And then, when so that's it. So long, Silver. Thanks for the laughs. And he goes, oh, that's her name. But it's like,
yeah.
But it's that's a really good scene in the way it's played out. And she, again, no damsel in distress. She knows something's wrong. Up. So she goes. So it's time to go back to the clinic to find out what's going on. And while she's at it, she also calls Dick Grayson,
who she doesn't really know at the time. She knows of him, but they've never met. But clearly, she knows that Dick Grayson's important, and he knows immediately. He's like, "Listen, you guys are broken up. Don't look into this." But he knows immediately. I got to get on this case. And Robin jumps into the scene. Love it. Love Robin. Love Dick Grayson.
And in terms of laying out a page here, on that page, it's page 7 of this issue. The way that Marshall Rogers lays out the panels when they're on the phone, of intentionally trying to do it like a phone cord and the panel breaks. Like, again, it's these little touches of detail that he puts in that, help elevate the story,
Oh, absolutely. Nothing worse than a boring, blasé panel breakout. If it's supposed to be an exciting page, you got to do something exciting. You throw in the little details, and maybe not everyone's going to notice it, but they're going to appreciate it once they do.
If you had like a lot of times when you see a lesser artist or more rushed book, just a phone call for a page could just be the dullest thing you read. But here, this is done with the same kind of frantic pacing as like an action scene, and ends with a big panel at the bottom of Robin on the motorcycle there. This is really...
That was great. This is my favorite page, maybe. Until we get to the Jokerfish stuff. That's the page.
Yeah, this is just as dynamic as an action page. That's what you want in a comic.
And then the very next page, she hangs up the phone, and one of the monsters is literally pulling the phone booth apart. So,
yeah.
I mean, this is... And then right into... Bruce Wayne trying to get it together and still unable to. So it's Robin's show for now.
And he figures out pretty in short order where Alfred and Bruce are. So he's going to have to storm Grey Tower to kind of get to him. And at the time, I guess the nurse, I think her name's Magda. She realizes something's afoul, and she's going to inject, I think, Alfred with monster serum or something. Mm-hmm. Or no, she's going to inject Bruce. That's what it is. And Alfred kind of like jumps in there like, this ain't going to happen. There's a little physical struggle, and she gets injected with the monster serum and gets turned into a monster. And that's, this is a fun issue.
Before that, something very important to the story. is Hugo Strange plans to auction off Batman's identity.
That's right. I forgot about that
And
part.
Thorne, Penguin, and someone two people we don't know, but you can figure out if you look at the panels. And so you have to put your good faith seed money in, and the bidding will be I think the next night. And when he leaves, that's when Thorne's men take out the monsters and kidnap Hugo Strange before we
does not go well. Turns out if you try to extort bad men for money to know the identity of Batman, they're just going to beat it out of you. Or at least they're going to try to. And
that's when we have the Magna's planning on, I guess, injecting Robin. That's when Alfred, steps in and she injects herself. And there's a little side note there. The page where she realized she's injected herself and says, "Now I'll become a monster." That little panel before that is a direct swipe from a Vampirella comic that had come out around the same time.
Nice.
So that's it. Even Marshall Rogers wasn't above, borrowing a panel when need be. But
and can we also talk right before that when Boss Thorne has his goons gun down those monsters that abduct Hugo Strange. There's the one panel at like the top of page 12 where his men have just they're gunning people down. He's got thugs going there, and he's just hanging out like he's lighting his cigar. Like he's got it completely under control. It's little touches like that set up like who Boss Thorne is.
And
it really should be the kingpin of Gotham or something like that. He's chopping cigars. He's kind of the man behind the scenes. He looks legitimate on the outside, completely corrupt on the inside kind of character. Yeah. But he should be used more. Let's put it that way, because they're doing a similar character in Nightwing right now, and it's like, you already had this character. He already exists for the most part. Yeah, and obviously, Kingpin just falls in with a character like a Nightwing, a Batman, or a Daredevil. So we get into, I believe it's 473. This one's called the Malay Penguin.
Wes, before we do that real quick, said while they're beating him, while they're trying to beat the information out of him, he will not divulge it. And he goes,
he says, you have to take it from Batman like I did.
I was a fool to think I could ever sell his identity. He's too good for the likes of you. And he goes to his grave with the secret. And the last line, Thorne says, loyalty to his arch enemy. The guy was nuts. You'd almost think he was the Batman. And you go back to the beginning of the issue, and I said just so much happens in this one issue and we're only 2 issues into this, and you think about all that's the only regret is at the time comics were down to 17 pages an issue, and you think about what he could pack into 17 pages.
Yeah, that's a 4 or 5 issue story arc.
And again, it's all these little touches here. In the 3 panels, as you're watching Hugo Strange die with his hand becoming looser and then falling to the ground, Rupert Thorne just has the cigar in his mouth, the smoke's coming out, and his hands stay in his pockets the whole time. Again, it's these little touches that tell you everything about this character.
Yeah, it's just he's just witnessing another Tuesday event. Yeah, very, very psychotic. So we get the after effects of this. We've got Batman and Robin together at the beginning of 473, the Malay Penguin, and they encounter some of Boss Thorne's thugs, but they do not realize what has just happened. They have just dumped the body of Hugo Strange into a river, and they encounter these thugs. They kind of work them over. They're getting to the bottom of it, and then they hear the police, and because of what Thorne has done, they're essentially like outlaws at this point, and they have to escape. They don't actually find out what the hell they were doing there. Very, very good way to open this up and kind of get some closure. And yes, Hugo Strange is dead.
Yeah, and he set this up perfectly in the last issue when you saw that the Penguin and the Joker were also there, putting in their bids, so they're around, and it's that setup payoff. Like, now we know like the Penguin's here, and there's hinting at the Joker is not far behind. So
the Penguin knows the Joker was there and he was looking for him, but he can't find him.
Yeah.
Like, where are you?
Yeah, there's a little scene at the docks when Batman's, strong arming one of the thugs, and they hear the sirens, and the thug goes, "I'm ready to welcome the police with open arms. Are you?" Which gives you an idea of just how much damage Thorne has done in this.
And they're aware of it too. They're like, the police are your friend in this case, because they're going to be after Batman first.
Yeah.
That was good stuff. And so Bruce, Batman and Robin kind of know, I guess, what Penguin's next heist is going to be. At least they think they know what it is. So they end up going to the Reed Gallery because this Malay penguin is going to be there. It's going to be on display. And the gallery is like, "Now we don't need your help." So then Bruce is like, "Well, I'm going to go try and fix things up with Silver St. Clair or St. Cloud as she's in the hospital." And then she finally gets introduced to Dick Grayson, who excuses himself as the two try to work things out as we're kind of moving the story along to a bigger confrontation.
And by the way, that's another Easter egg because at the time, David Reed was writing Batman.
Very nice.
Nice.
So many of these wonderful little things in there. I had no idea about that one.
Yeah. Another one of those little nice things is how they let Silver dress in the hospital.
Mm-hmm. Yes, she looked very nice.
That's why Dick's outside the room going, "Ooh wee!"
Yeah, I better get out of here. So it turns out Batman and Robin's intuition was right. They find the Penguin near the Reed Gallery, where this Malay penguin's going to be. It feels like they've jumped him, but Penguin, I guess, is ahead of these guys. He uses like his helicopter umbrella gag, and he leaves him with a cryptic message: "Never pitch rolls at the bank." And he escapes. Fun time. So they knew what was up, but it's like Penguin's leading him along at this point.
Yeah. It's it's that whole bit. It's very reminiscent of like that bit about pitching rolls at a bank feels very like that Adam West Batman kind of thing. I think that's like, it feels like a little bit of a callback to like some older Batman kind of stuff, but it works great. The
villain has a one-liner as he's escaping on whatever unpractical idea that he had to escape Batman at that moment.
Yeah, and it ends up being very it's funny too because it's towards the end of the issue, so I won't get there yet. But Penguin has a bit of his own like little Ozymandias moment at the end of issue 11 of Watchmen there with the with the reveal. But we'll get there.
Well, there's also I think when I read this story, I thought, okay, Englehart's only got a handful of issues, and he's not going to have time to use the Riddler. So he kind of incorporated a little of the Riddler's MO into the Penguin's heist here because he does the series of clues.
Yeah, there's birds dropping coins on the city and all the other things that are happening.
And real quick before a scene that prior to this, when Penguin goes back to the theater and realizes he's been stood up because he comes back to bid on the identity. There's no Hugo Strange. And he hears the Joker laughing in the balcony. And when he goes, "Show yourself, you grinning gargoyle," and then just gets laughed at again. He goes, "The Penguin fears no sane man, but the Joker's hardly sane. I'm out."
Yeah. No, it's really great. The whole bit's great. You get some great action with the, his umbrella there. Nice little fight with Batman, Robin, and the Penguin. And
and
before we get to the final, we also learn that Boss Thorne, he's starting to have visions of Hugo Strange like threatening it, which is certain that's something that we're going to see kind of throughout this story as it progresses. It gets worse and worse for him. Then we get the final confrontation. Batman figures it out. There's no riddle that Batman can't solve. He is the world's greatest detective. And he figures out that Penguin is going to be hijacking a plane. We get some more action. But my favorite part is when they get on the plane, Penguin's like, "I stole the Malay penguin weeks ago. It never even made it into Gotham."
Yeah.
Crazy? Of course I stole it.
I love the line. Who said anything about passing it up, twerp? I stole that weeks ago.
Yeah, it's so good. It makes it all kind of make sense too, like where it's like it's not your typical like, oh, I tipped you off so you'd find me. Like he was trying to tip him off to get him away from him, and it didn't work out. But so that's a nice play on that trope, and again, it's just great with that whole bit. I love it where it's like, of course I stole it. What are you?
That's my favorite. It's like, yeah, of course he stole it. It's the Penguin. He stole it weeks ago. He never made it into that gallery. That's a fake.
Yeah.
So after that, we get this Deadshot issue. I think it's called Deadshot Ricochet, Detective 474. And essentially, Robin exits the story at this point. He gets a call from Wonder Girl, and Batman's like, you need to go over there and tend to the Teen Titans. That's your team. So he kind of exits the story. And Penguin, his cellmate is Deadshot. Or I think they're next to each other.
Yeah.
And Penguin is a moron. He's a little bit of a braggart. Says, I got my laser monocle. I'm going to spring myself from the joint. And, of course, Deadshot steals it and springs himself out. I'm like, whoops. Not the smartest play ever.
Yeah, there's a scene in there when he takes it, he goes, if it's that good, I want it. Because he's talking, he goes, yeah, Deadshot says, I see you're back again. He goes, at least I come and go while you just stay and stay and stay. And then he's monologuing about his plan, and he grabs it from him. In that little panel where he waddles over to the cell, the way they have the word balloon, give that back to me, you. It just, I love that because I'm probably not going to happen, Pengy. So he uses that to make his escape. But before that scene, real quick, when Robin gets the call, he does that thing with Batman says, you've been seeing a lot of Wonder Girl and Duel of Death lately, and he goes, yeah, I learned a lot from you, Bruce, about both gunmen and girls. He goes, you stick to Silver St. Cloud and leave the heavy stuff to the experts. Mm-hmm. And as he goes off, Batman's saying, yeah, get out of here. And then he, just to himself, he goes, it was really good to see you, pal. And why that's important is the subsequent years after this, their relationship deteriorated to the point to where he eventually abandoned the Robin identity.
Yeah.
So this was kind of the last time they were really, really close for years.
Mm-hmm.
The last big team up.
Well, maybe not the last big team. There were teams, but their relationship changed because this was like the last vestige of Dick Grayson as his almost like son figure.
Yeah.
Before he fully embraced adulthood, and then the conflict between the two became more into focus. But this was a really nice character moment for the two.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we get, what do we get? Oh, Batman visits Boss Thorne.
Yeah,
actually,
finally.
He's like, listen. He almost chastises him. What the hell are you doing? Why are you making these? Why are you having people trying to track me down? And then he lets him know, like, I don't know, feels like he's trying to intimidate him that he's going to do things the Batman way, moving forward. And maybe the gloves are off because he's tired of Boss Thorne and his men kind of interfering. And then we also get another hallucination of Hugo Strange kind of coming to Boss Thorne. He's feeling quite guilty about murdering the man.
Yeah, it's that. I love it. He goes from he's all full of himself, and Batman says, "Knock it off. There are no voters here to impress." But he keeps the tough guy act going until he leaves. Strange shows up, and he just turns into a puddle of goo because it's really getting to him now.
Yeah, and notice also the way they used to do these kind of things in comics. Here, a lot of other comics, there's no real ideology in terms of like, we don't know if Boss Thorne is one way or the other. It's up to the reader to decide. Mm-hmm. It's about corrupt politicians.
Yes.
And that the party and all this and the other goals aren't important. And this makes it more, I think, accessible to any reader, because I think we could all relate to not liking a politician. I think that's
You know what's also interesting about this story? It's a Deadshot story, but the reason for this story is for the confrontation between Batman and Thorne to progress the fact that Thorne is having these hallucinations and it's really getting to him, and also for the last big reveal to happen. But you couldn't have a slice of life kind of comic like that, so you have to have this this jailbreak and this final confrontation. But so you get this fun action in it, but they're laying the groundwork kind of for this final act that's coming up, and we get this Batman runs into the Deadshot. They're fighting on the top of the building. It's a lot of fun, but they end up going into this convention center where I think Silver St. Cloud was already going to be. And the funniest moment is I was kind of giggling to myself when I saw him running over this giant typewriter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's a callback to the Golden Age. And before they get there, when she takes him over to the convention center to explain what she does, before the first panel, the city, the street scene where he's getting out of the cab, I don't know if that was taken from a photograph, but the detail in that is just amazing, especially considering it was 1977. But
yeah,
they start talking, and she's keeping it light, and then Bruce makes a comment about, "I don't joke about the Wayne Foundation," and she kind of, "Oh yeah," and then he goes, "Our first fight." He goes, "This is getting serious," and this is before they get to the convention center. She explains what she does. So this to me was never a Deadshot story,
no,
as much as it was defining the Bruce and Silver St. Cloud relationship.
Yeah.
And so many Batman stories before or after, because he even says a line, he goes, I've loved other women, but as Bruce Wayne, he goes, but Bruce Wayne has become a daytime mask for the Batman in what I wanted any other way. And she's a challenge to that. So to me, this issue, and I would say the entire story arc, the villains were just the backdrop for the relationship.
Yeah, it's all about his identity.
Yeah,
what is he going to be moving forward?
And and they have they have lunch, and there's even a little callback to the very early issues of Batman where he used to listen to the police reports while he was sitting in his manor smoking his pipe with his smoking jacket on, and so they're wonderful callbacks. And like I said, Deadshot was from that time when he originally appeared. He was in a top hat and tails, pretending to fight for truth and justice, when in reality he was trying to build his coffers. And so I said that led to, and then like I said, the Giant Typewriter. I mean, this was right out of 1945, and really this whole arc felt like it could have taken place 30 years before it was written, because it just has that feel. And like I said, because honestly, it only takes him a page to beat Deadshot.
Yeah, I was about to say the conflict is almost nothing. He gets stuck in the Giant Typewriter. He has to surrender, but there's the big moment. Silver St. Cloud is looking at Batman, and she realizes that's Bruce Wayne. I'm dating Batman. I did not realize this. And there's like a moment where he kind of realizes that there's she's recognizing who he is. And that's really the big moment of recognition. That's what we're moving this story here for.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and they set up a couple of pages beforehand, and then the very last panel that you got the Joker coming.
Story. Yeah. Joker story for the finale, and the next issue is the big one. The one everyone knows. Everyone's seen the Laughing Fish. If you haven't read the comic, you've seen images from it. You've seen images inspired from it. We just saw Joker Fish in Batman 3 Jokers from Jeff Johns. And I love this version of Joker.
Yeah.
He's so maniacal. There's nothing redeeming about the character, but he's just weird. You never can predict what he's going to do. When we read this story, I couldn't predict the way that he was going to act in it. I wouldn't have thought that that's what he was going to do. But before we get in there, we get this awkward meeting. It is one of the more awkward like character with his girlfriend meetings I've ever seen. Batman goes over to Silver St. Cloud's apartment. He wants to know if she knows, and she doesn't want him to know that she knows because she wants to be reliable or trustworthy. It's just an awkward moment. And then when Batman leaves, she knows it's Bruce. Bruce calls her back to cancel a date. And she just, he's going to postpone the date. And she's like, well, let's just cancel it. And she decides she's going to leave the city to kind of, I don't know, clear her head or get some space. It was just, there was some awkwardness there, Breen. It was like me when I was 12 years old trying to talk to a girl.
Yeah, that's it. Just in the way he lays out the panels, when she collapses on next to the bed when he leaves, because like it's she knows, but she can't bring herself to believe it. So even though she knows she was talking to her boyfriend, it was like she was talking to someone completely different, as if they were two different people residing in the same body. And the body language of both characters is flawless in this scene. And then I said, when Batman goes to the payphone to say, I'm going to be a little late. And she goes, why don't we just call it off? And she goes, I got to get out of here. And then that's when, Batman runs into, the people on the pier and finds out what's going to be happening for the next issue plus.
Yeah. And the colors, again, Marshall Rogers does all his own colors through this. The couple of pages of Talking with Silver are very bright colors. And then as soon as Silver's out of the picture there, you see her a little bit. She's heading out, but it goes right to a very dark palette, which I imagine has to be intentional, that it was showing that. Like, this is one world.
She represents one thing. Tracking down the Joker represents another. Which path is he going to take? It's up to him. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So he goes down there. He is on the docks, and a fisherman comes up to him and wants to sell him some fresh fish. And he looks in there, and we finally get the first appearance of the Joker fish. This is going to be one of the most insane story arcs I've ever read in my life. It's like, what is Joker doing here? And so we get the Joker fish, and then we get Joker and like his henchmen are going into like the copyright commission, I guess. There's a clerk there, and he's demanding that he gets to trademark or copyright these Joker fish. And the clerk's like, you can't trade or copyright like wildlife. And he's like, well, you've got to midnight. If it doesn't happen, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
Like, his whole plan is to trademark fish. Who comes up with this stuff, Bree? It's so weird.
And you said this is your favorite version of the Joker, and I agree. The first panel when he's walking in laughing, and the guy goes, good Lord. In the next panel, you see Joker. Where?
Yeah.
I see. That's just an expression before he starts threatening him. And this version of the Joker, this is the best version because he's not otherworldly. He's just cold calculating, almost like a controlled type of insanity.
He's the ultimate wild card. You just don't know what he's going to do.
Yeah,
there's certainly why he's doing it.
Yeah.
And I said that he monologues with the best of them as he's laying out what's going to happen, what he wants to do, and what's going to happen to the council if he doesn't get his demands met. Even to where he's walking out, and one of his red shirts says, "What are you going to do now, boss?" He goes, "I have another matter to attend to, and by the way, mind your own business," and throws him out in front of the boss.
Yeah.
So it's apparently. That must be kind of commonplace because, well, nobody seems to question that happens. But the next scene is very important.
This is the most interesting scene I've ever seen with Joker in a comic book. It's so weird.
Yeah,
you would think he wants to know the identity of Batman. Well, but it turns out he doesn't. He's going to check on Boss Thorne to see if he knows. Apparently, if he does know, he's going to kill him. Because he wants to ensure Batman's identity remains a secret. My interpretation is so that they can keep playing the game together. Like that's the way he sees their interactions together. He doesn't see it as life and death. He thinks that they're having a fun time.
That is true at this time. That's something that kind of goes back and forth depending on who's writing the character. But this iteration of the Joker, it was all about the game. And in order to keep the game going, he basically, because Thorne even says he's protecting Batman just like Hugo Strange. And it's just more layers to this story. And this is again, This is the best version of the Joker because this is
like the modern Joker. I guess the subtext is that he's in love with Batman, and he wants all Batman's affection and attention kind of put on him, and that's why he's so obsessed with him. I think this is a better. I don't know if it's better, but this is my preferred version of the Joker. With that, like he wants to play around with Batman and have fun.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's definitely a better version because if you go back to the most recent event, the Joker War, where he found out his identity. Again, I said that was never two characters that could have easily over time found out his identity, always chose not to, was the Joker and Commissioner Gordon. There was a story where Batman wanted to tell Gordon who he was, and Gordon wouldn't let him. And you always kind of got the feeling that maybe he knew, maybe he didn't, or maybe he just didn't want to know. But it was almost like it was sort of like a game within a game. And that's the Joker we get in this story, where it's not important who he is. It's important what he is and what he represents. And that's the ultimate, adversary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love how, like you're saying with Boss Thorne here, he's just like, what is wrong with all you people? Like, he's like the rational guy here who's like,
we need to kill this guy. He's our bottom line.
Yeah. He's Dr. Evil's son in Austin Powers. Like, what? You just shoot him.
He's right there. Just murder him now. I will do it. Give me the gun. I will shoot.
The Joker has a line in this scene where he goes, what fun would it be in humbling mere policemen? And that puts his whole MO into perspective. That's without Batman, why bother? At the time, that was kind of the way the Joker thought.
And the next scene, it's more of the game. Batman and Commissioner Gordon know that he's going to kill this clerk, supposedly, before midnight. They go to his house, and they're looking for traps, weapons, whatever. There's a big broadcast from the Joker saying at midnight, this guy's going to die. But Batman and Gordon are there, so he's going to be fine, right? Turns out, no. There's a deadly gas, I guess, that comes in here. But only the clerk dies, and they've kind of figured out that when he visited him earlier, I guess he sprayed him with a compound that was part of this binary poison. And that's how he ends up getting the clerk right underneath Batman's nose. He could not stop him breathing.
Which they recycle that in Batman '89, that movie, because it's the same plot.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an homage to Batman issue 1, because that was the first Joker story. That's how he was killing people. And again, I said this, everything about this entire arc just felt like it could have been done in the 30s or 40s. And that's exactly what they did here.
And also the pacing of Marshall Rogers here, page 16, for example, we talk about panel breaks, and it's all supposed to be time between things. Scott McCloud talks about that a lot in his Understanding Comics. On the top row, you have those 5 panels. So there's some time between what's happening there. Meanwhile, panel 6, there's no panel breaks. So you're supposed to read that as he's rapidly changing after that. So he's struggling at the top, and it takes a little bit of time, and then he quickly gets the Joker face there. So, again, really, it's a real mastery of the medium. The best artists in this medium, people like Marshall Rogers, people like Gil Kane, understand that and use that to its fullest when they're doing these comics.
Visual storyteller. Absolutely. So do we have anything else to say about that story? Or are we going to get to the finale here?
Oh, there's the one where Silver is apparently her car's broken down.
Yeah,
and
she's hitchhiking.
She's hitchhiking, gets picked up by who? Boss Thorne. So it ends with them driving off as the storm is about to unleash on the Gotham sky.
Yes, it's a very moody finale on this, the sign of the Joker, the follow-up to the Jokerfish story. And he's not done with it, Joe. He still wants to copyright this Jokerfish thing. I think he must think it's hilarious. No, it's getting under Batman's skin. He literally murdered a guy, right next to him, and there's nothing he could do to stop it. So Batman's, he's like, well, let me come up with a new plan. I'm going to disguise myself as the new official that he's going after, the city official named Thomas Jackson. I will disguise myself as him. I will disguise Thomas Jackson as Batman. And that way, if Joker comes after Thomas Jackson, he's coming after Batman and doesn't know it. Boom. Batman's one step ahead of him this time. And that is not how it goes.
Nope.
Because we have his fish arrives and he's got one of the Joker fish in his mouth. And apparently he's infected because he's got the Joker smile on the cat. And the cat goes after his owner. And that's how he gets him. There's nothing Batman can do to stop Joker Breen. He's too smart. He's too unpredictable.
And the page before, if you notice, the person that Commissioner Gordon was talking to was named O'Hara, who they actually used in the 60s, but hadn't been used since then.
Yeah.
So that was another Easter egg. And you got 2 for 2. And then he threatens. Of course, he comes on the TV, says, "Well, he's dead too, and if I don't get my patent by dawn, number 3's coming." And that's when Batman leaves, literally by busting through the door, and then he sees something called a vapor analysis meter because he thinks he saw Thor or Dr. Hugo Strange. So it kind of casts doubt as to is
he's hallucinating or not?
Yeah. So is there really a strange ghost out there, or what's going on? And we don't find out in this storyline, and I don't think we're supposed to. But then we go back to the Joker, who's again he's sitting by himself doing what he does best, talking to himself. And then when he goes, "Wait a minute, what if nobody eats fish?" He goes, then this whole thing's for naught. And he goes, nah, because the vegetarians would never stand for it. And then he goes, I know, I just put it in cattle. And then the next line where he's standing up and he goes, Joker burgers. Outrageous. I love this whole, it's just, that whole page is just awesome. Just hearing him just go on. And that's the Joker.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the dichotomy of the characters is Batman is witnessing all these things, the horror, people being murdered left and right, no regard for human life, and seeing what he's doing to fish and animals. He must be just, beside himself. How am I going to deal with this? And Joker's having the time of his life. He's never had more fun in his life, Joe. I just love the difference between the two characters.
For sure. And even on the last panel there on page 5, where it's like the page turn, it's a bit meta, where it's like, the turn of the page is busted through it. It's great. This Joker is easily the best. And then this leads into 4 pages of again. This is all with Silver St. Cloud and Rupert Thorne, and then what ends up happening to Thorne. But it's very intense, but it's moody. It's very noir looking, and you can do these sort of scenes if you do them right. Zooming in on Silver's eyes, having the shadows, having it be like any moment something could happen. Like any moment, Thorne could potentially pull a gun and blow her brains out as you're reading this. And
she defends Batman anyway, knowing that. So it kind of shows you what her character is.
Yeah, it's so good. And again, another artist or another writer could have done this in a way where it was this could have easily been bland, boring nonsense. This easily could have been overly lit, zoomed out too far, people hanging out in a car without the level of threat to it. But it's done so masterfully that this scene is just as intense as, Batman and Robin fighting the Penguin, or, Batman fighting Deadshot, or anything like that. That's how you tell a story in comics.
And what makes this scene so good is she got in the car trying to escape Batman and Bruce Wayne. But as they're going, they don't talk for several hours. And then an announcement comes across the radio, and Thorne says, shove the Batman buddy or whatever. And she instantly starts to defend him, starts disparaging him. They get into an argument. He kicks her out of the car. And the first thing she does is charters a plane to get back to him.
Yeah.
Because it just, the way that scene plays out, everything about this story is brilliant in this part because it's so effective. Because what the penultimate scene when Batman's fighting the Joker, which is also anticlimactic, because again, I think this story was more about Thorne, Silver St. Cloud, the relationship with Bruce. The Bat villains were just kind of along for the ride, and the Jokerfish story just kind of got a life of its own, let down the road. But because a couple pages later, she's watching the fight and everything changes again.
And so let's get to that moment. So before that happens, Thorne takes off, and Hugo Strange, he hallucinates and kind of attacks him again. And that's the last time we see that. And we get to this big final confrontation. They're at the HQ, and like you said, it is a little bit anticlimactic, but I think it makes sense because in a physical confrontation, Joker is absolutely no match for Batman. All he can do is run and hope that Batman falls on his face while he's coming after him. Literally, if the two end up, going head to head, he's going to eat it hard. So they're at the HQ, and all of a sudden, he and Gordon realize that Joker's there. He's impersonating a police officer. I think he tries to spray him in the face with acid or something. Yeah, it's just great. Felt like it was right out of the movies. The movies probably took it all from this, of course.
Oh yeah, this and like Breen was saying, like Batman #1 and some other things, but yeah, it's all great, and yeah, you have the whole the chase scene here where Batman even makes a reference to the fact that like he's looking for more secure footing. In some ways, he's as sane as anybody,
except for me for going after him. That's the next line.
Yes. It's interesting. It's an interesting, and again, this page, it's like you look at how they're climbing and the fight. It's the choices Marshall Rogers makes here in laying out this page is so dynamic and interesting.
Yep. So they're going up and they're fighting. They end up on a girder, and I think he finally uses the acid again to kind of destabilize it. But Batman is a quick thinking man. He's also a very athletic gentleman, and he kind of jumps to safety. And it does not work out well for Joker Breen. I know you wanted to say something. I'm sorry.
No. And I said it again, after a 2-page conversation and a little bit of action, the fight ends not with a bang per se, but with a whimper. Joker apparently falls off the girder to his apparent demise. But before that happened, Silver arrives just in time to see everything that's unfolding, which I think, again, is more important to the story than the confrontation, other than to serve the fact that she is now, again, she saw him fighting Deadshot, but that it was almost like cartoonish because they're fighting a giant typewriter.
She didn't realize it was her boyfriend until the end anyway.
Yeah, and she had actually suspected as far back as issue 470 when he's in the water, he comes out and his hair's damp, and that was like her first clue even before this started. But she realizes this was life and death. I mean, they are literally one misstep and he's done.
And the lightning strikes and Joker goes into the water.
Yeah.
So they speak, and she goes, "I can't do this." Because I finally saw you fighting life and death. I couldn't live with it. It's the old classic, policeman's wife thing. I can't live knowing that every time you go out might be the time you don't come back, and we have to end this before we can't help ourselves. They kiss, and then she runs away and says, "Don't call me." It just isn't going to work. And then he gets the guy, or Gordon comes in and goes, "Yeah, we caught the Ohio State Patrol caught Boss Thorne," and he's babbling like a baby. He's confessed everything he's ever done, all the way back to Prohibition, including framing you. You're in the clear. And before he even gets finished, Batman's already, left, because that's not as important to him as what he just experienced. So again, perfect wrap up.
Yeah, and it's turning the idea on its head of Batman originally. Well, Bruce is the whole idea was I don't want Silver to find out, because that's going to affect her life, and like that could endanger her. But it's actually, when she does find out, she doesn't care about that. She cares about him endangering his life. It's not even about her, and she's like, I'm done. I can't do it. So it's interesting how the dynamic works out, and what Bruce is thinking is going to be the problem isn't the problem, and how it all ends up playing out, how everything's set up with Boss Thorne is sort of wrapped up at the end of this, and
he confesses to everything, because he's basically a puddle of goo, because he keeps getting attacked by these apparitions of Hugo Strange.
Yeah, and it would be a few years later when Jerry Conway takes over the book that we see when Boss Thorne gets out of jail, and what he does to try to take Gotham back. Jerry takes a lot from this. We see Deadshot come back, and other characters, and that's a great run on its own. But yeah, this is short. This is a little burst of like these 6 issues here, but so much is packed into it. And, I'd argue it's better than almost anything that's happened since Crisis,
Absolutely fantastic. You think about it, once you're done with it, and you realize, okay, we got Boss Thorne, we got Deadshot, we got Penguin, we got Jokerfish, we got all these things, the Return of the Monsters. Is like Hugo Strange returning. Like, wow, 6 issues, and there's like 2 major threads that are wrapped up by the end, and you have like 3 individual adventures, and Robin's left. It's like, wow, pretty crazy. Yeah. That's some time management. There's maximizing your real estate in a comic book.
Yeah, and it's all in under 100 pages, because it's 17 pages each for 6 issues, so it's like about 95 pages. Yeah.
And so this is collected. We said it was which trade is it?
It's in Strange Apparitions. You can also get it. There's a hardcover of Tales of the Batman by Steve Englehart, and all of that's in there, plus a few other stories. So those are probably the easiest ways to pick it up outside of trying to either go back issue diving, or checking out Comixology or something like that.
One impediment to back issue diving is this run is expensive.
Yeah.
And now finding the Jokerfish story is pretty easy. It's in the Joker Omnibus. I also have it in this stacked deck.
Nice.
Which is like a soft, like a, however you call it. It's a beautiful collection, but
nice. Yeah.
But I said it's been reprinted several times. I actually ordered it one time thinking I was getting a deal on it. It came back and the text was German.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I got it in my Legends of the Dark Knight Marshall Rogers hardcover, which this one's out of print. And I got it signed by Denny O'Neil. But
beautiful.
Yeah, this is
the paperback version is what I ordered, and it was German text. I was like 9.
Yeah, and this is some great. This one also has the 479, or what was it? Yeah, 478, 479 with the Len Wein Clayface 2-parter, which is also really great. There's a lot of great stuff here. The return of Silver St. Cloud, a couple of returns of her are in this as well. If you really like seeing where those sort of things go. The stuff from Legends of the Dark Knight, like 132 to 136, that bit, which was plotted out by Archie Goodwin, was pretty good. It's none of it is as good as what we just went over, But if you're like, oh, I want more of this, and I like Marshall Rogers, and I want to see what happens with Silver St. Cloud, it's good.
Well, there was also the sequel of sorts, The Dark Detective, that was done in the early 2000s, I believe, where they reunited Englehart and Rogers. Now, there's a sequel to the Jokerfish story in Legends of the DC Universe. It's a 2-part Aquaman story, where it basically tells the story of what happened to the Joker when he fell into the water. He ends up meeting up with Aquaman, and at the time, the story's kind of, you have to kind of put aside your sense of disbelief or whatever that term is, because Aquaman doesn't know who the Joker is and welcomes him into Atlantis. But it's a cute story, but it is kind of like a tying up the loose ends of what happened to the Joker after he fell into the river.
All right, fellas, we are well over an hour on this retrospective. I knew it was going to take a long time, just like the death of George Stacy, Gwen Stacy. Had a lot of fun. This was a lot of great stuff. We'll be doing Marvel Comics next week. Thank you so much to Eric Breen. Thank you so much to Joe Corallo coming on here, talking about some of these classic stories. But we definitely want to hear from you guys. Have you read this one already? If you haven't, are you going to check it out? This is a lot of fun.